I'm meeting here with Federico Mayor in the foundation Ramon Areces. Foundation is an institution for the promotion of science, life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences, I believe.
Yeah.
Is it something comparable to the National Science Foundation in the United States?
Yes, from the very beginning, this was more than 40 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we consider that we must follow the example of all those that in a given moment they help and they support the scientific community, social sciences, philosophical, that for me philosophy is essential, and economic as well. But particularly here was for infrequent diseases, because from the very beginning, this was what I did 50 years ago. Now in Spain is compulsory. All the children, 40 hours after they are born, they must have a diagnosis in order to prevent from having these diseases that are irreversible. And it's for this that my first book was Tomorrow is Always Late. And now in the Anthropocene, that is your, now is your, we must take care because we are facing potentially irreversible processes. Well, and then, as I was telling you from the very beginning, I had the support of this foundation. Afterwards, with Professor Severo Ochoa, that was a Nobel laureate. He was the president of the scientific committee, and now I am the president. From when he died, I was already the president of the scientific. And this is for this that we are here, and I am very happy and very honored that Jan Visser is today here in this foundation.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. And as you mentioned my name, I don't have to introduce myself anymore to the audience. Now, Federico, we've known each other for a pretty long time. I remember the first time we met face-to-face was in Dakar, in Senegal. And then frequently later in Paris at UNESCO, where you were the Director General from 1987, I think, to 1999. Is that correct?
Yes.
12-year mandate.
Yes.
So I got to know you in that context very well, but we continued our friendship beyond UNESCO, and it's a friendship between us, but also of us with UNESCO, because one never leaves UNESCO, as you mentioned when you left the building there. But UNESCO is still there, and we're still interested in the well-being of that organization.
You have mentioned two things that for me are very important. You have mentioned Senegal. We were the first meeting there. And for me, Africa is crucial. Africa is crucial because I think that they have something, sometimes we have more knowledge, but they have more wisdom. I am an admirer of the wisdom of Africa in general, particularly of the women of Africa. Second, in Senegal, very close to Senegal, was where the culture of peace started, in Yamoussoukro. Was there that in 1989, I decided, was only 2 years after my appointment as the Director General of UNESCO, to start with this that must be the new culture. Because we have been, from the origin of time, we have been always a culture of war, si vis pacem para bellum. Always the power has been male power and has been also absolute power. And they have said, to have peace we must prepare for war. And this has been from this, and now again, Mr. Trump again says that what we need is more money for defense, more military expenditures, more investment in weaponry. And it's for this that I think that when the human race started in the heart of Africa. Also, I was very happy that the culture of peace started as well in the heart of Africa, in Yamoussoukro, in Côte d'Ivoire. But also, there is another point of Senegal that I would like now here to stress, because for me it's very important, is the human dignity. Because in Senegal, very close to Dakar, is the island of Gorée. And in this island were one of the places, more important places, from which all the slave road started. And it's horrible to imagine that during so many years, so many period of time, all these human beings were sold, and they were absolutely disregarded. They were thrown when, all this we must take into account, because this race, the black people, still is able to smile to us. They have said one thing that I consider is extremely important. They have said that to forgive is feasible, to forget is impossible. I think that now, in this period of time, we must also be able to, not to forget, because this is not feasible, but we can forgive.
The most incredible thing is that it was considered normal. And I sometimes wonder what future generations should think about us, the things that we consider normal, but they will no longer consider normal, the way that we destroy the planet.
And for this we should have more memory of the past. I always like to say that our only solution is the future, because we can write the future, but the past has already been written. Therefore, we must know very well what happened. But we must learn the lessons of the past. And now is for this. You are right. I am also very worried, because I remember that in my early age, when I was thinking, what has happened? How another Second World War was feasible? Why this happened? How could Hitler and Mussolini and Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan, how they could arrange this, saying that we are a supreme race, that the supremacism, racism, xenophobia, all this kind of terrible, why this was able to generate this immense support that they had. And I have arrived to the conclusion that this was the origin of, because as you have said before concerning the blacks, in a given moment they were just saying that they are not humans, they are humanoids, but not humans. And now we have again the same. Now we have in the last years, and this is for me terrible, we have also again some races or some peoples or some countries that say we are superior. This is terrible. Supremacism kills, because in a given moment you consider that if my religion is the truth, yours is wrong, that my ideology is the only that can be, yours is wrong, that my race, my color of skin is better and you are not. You know, it's for this that here you are right. Here we must be very strong now. We must say no. We must say we are not going to allow, again, that there are some countries, some people that consider that they are the leaders of the world and the others are submitted to them. And in this respect, I think that one of the things that now we must promote in order that the Anthropocene will have solutions in the future, and this must be done very rapidly because we are in front of potentially reversible processes, is precisely this, to say no. Supremacism, no. Dogmatism, no. Fanaticism, no. Because we know that this kills. And we must say this very clear. And we must say why multilateralism has been marginalized. Why Mr. Reagan and Madam Thatcher said no anymore. Was a moment in which I was at the year 89, I was full of hope, because it was the moment in which there was a prisoner from more than 27 years was prisoner. I went to see him in Robben Island when he was 26 years old, and I wrote a poem for him, because I said, this is an exceptional person, because instead of saying, when I will leave this, I am here only because of the color of my skin. When I will leave this, I will go to vengeance and instead of this, you remember, in 6 months, he was able to be an example, a reference of conciliation, of how you can say no, and how you can say, we pardon you.
An enormous transformation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic transformation. At the same time, there was another man that was unexpected, that was Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, that when Mr. Reagan was talking about the Star Wars, we're now going away, he said, no, no. What worries to me is a starvation, not the Star Wars. and as you know, all the Soviet Union, this immense space of silence, of oppression, suddenly they were able to convert this immense space of oppression in a community of independent states. At this moment, I was saying, now we have the solutions, here are the solutions. But at this moment was when Reagan and Thatcher said, out the United Nations, and now G6. At the beginning, was only 6 countries that were taking in their hands the reins of the common destiny. What is this? How this was tolerated? And then they said 7, and then 8, and now 20. It's the same. Look, it's the same. We must now think that only to reinforce a new multilateralism, democratic multilateralism, saying what is democracy, because democracy is not the consultation, democracy is not to listen the voice of the people, particularly these people is absolutely out of their good sense.
Their mind.
The UNESCO's constitution, I recommend to many people to read, because it was written in a moment of very human tension, very important human tension. And they said, humanity must be guided by the democratic principles of justice. This is the first. Second, freedom. Third, equality. And fifth and fourth, they say solidarity, but they say not only material solidarity, but human and intellectual solidarity. This is what, this is what now I think can be a solution for the Anthropocene in a moment in which we have a lot of global threats, but we know that there is not a matter of new diagnosis or new think tanks. Now what we need is a new kind of education, but not for the children.
Yeah. The title of your chapter for the book on Seeking Understanding is Inventing the Future, right?
Yeah.
When I started reading it first, I thought, is this actually new that we are going to invent the future? Or have people always been doing it? But when I kept on reading, I thought, yeah, indeed, there's something different now from what there was in the past. There was change, but change was sort of. It didn't require the conscience of people as much as it does now. And you stress that point in your book, don't you?
Yes, because I have been living in a moment in which, and I have been taking decisions. I was one of the persons of the Spanish transition from a dictatorship to a democracy. And I realized one thing, that I think that now we must be very careful on this, that when we were talking about the Spanish people, you said, no, we are the 10% only of the Spanish people. Because women, at this moment, women were completely out of the scenario. If you see the persons that were involved in there is no single woman there. We were only men and the 10% of the persons that at this moment were living in Spain. Why? Because 90% of the people, and this happens today still in some parts of the world, 90% were born, living and dying in 40 square kilometers. And they do not need anything what's happening. I'm not talking about people, no. In my own case, I was born in Barcelona, and I remember that when I was 18 years, I only knew only what was happening around me. Mm-hmm. We were completely unaware of what was happening in in Greece or in Argentina or in United, completely unaware. We were unaware, we were obedient, we were silent, we were submitted. And then it's for this that I like what you have said. What has changed? Why we must now reconsider completely all, including the learning process, the educational process. What has changed is that now, from 25 years ago, in some extent, due to the digital technology, now we know what happens in all the world. We are aware of what happens. Second, very important, we can express. For the first time, I always remember when Gorbachev was telling me the story of the person that wanted to say something in Prague, in the radio of Prague. Who say, no, 1 minute. They said, no, nothing. And then at the end, he said, 1 word. And they said, well, 1 word, yes. And he said, please, come in. we are, yes, because he says, socorro. Come to us. And this is because now for the first time, we can express ourselves. Now I have written a little book that says, a crime of silence, delito de silencio. Mm-hmm. Now, why we are not expressing ourselves? Now we have already voice. 25 years ago was not possible. And excuse me, sorry. We have a third condition that for me is the most important one, and this is women. Mm-hmm. Now, we the peoples, as it is said in the first phrase of the UN Charter, that I also consider that we must know this very well. What at this moment was so lucid, was so wise to say, we the people, not we the states, not we the governments, we the peoples. But at this moment, we the peoples were only some men. Mm-hmm. There was not a single woman. Now we can say, what a wonder. For the first time in history, women, not what they say equity, no, equality. We must tell again what is said in the UNESCO's constitution. The human beings are all equal in dignity. This is so important, Jan, that in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, I am sure that there must be very, very little number of persons in the government that have read this. But it's fantastic because I repeat, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union starts saying dignity. Before life, dignity. And life, human life must be dignified life. This is what we must now put here, because we consider that all these people that are leaving their countries because we do not help them to have, they're dying of hunger. Every day, thousands of persons are dying of hunger. And we are saying, oh, now we are going to have even more defense. But what is this? $4 billion per day in armament and in weapons, when people is dying of extreme poverty, of but not having good health services. What is this? Now we have fantastic hope. That is, the women has finally appeared. The absolute power is not in the hands of men anymore. Now we the peoples are men and women. Yeah. And we are there, all the There is no discrimination at all. And I like to repeat this because in the year 1996, I went to Pretoria to see my friend Nelson Mandela. And I told him, Mr. President, I am a little disappointed because I have put in the machine the culture of peace and non-violence, and the support is no enthusiasm in favor of having a culture of peace instead of a culture of war and no violence at all. And he told me, Federico, in 15, 20 years, the things will start to change. And I told him, why? And he said, because women will be the cornerstone of the new era. Mm-hmm. They will be the cornerstone. And I look at him saying, why? And he told me, because women only exceptionally utilizes force. Men only exceptionally do not. And this is what we must realize. We are always now, for example, what has happened in the last 2 years? In the last 2 years has happened that Mr. Trump arrives and says, more money for defense. And immediately, all the countries, including mine, all the countries, yes, what do you want?
About it.
Yes, but the same man, the same Trump, says, I will not put into practice what my predecessor decided concerning the climate change. I will not put into practice the Sustainable Development Goals, and all the others completely silent. And all these people that now can express themselves, that now can put their WhatsApp and said a very global claim saying, Mr. Trump, if you are offending our descendants, if you are really not taking into consideration what you are doing, the threat that you represent for our children and their children, we will not buy any more products from the United States, for example. I mean, now we must raise our voice. Why we are now silent? Why now we are here, the scientific community, the universities, listening what he says, and now he has more money. There is more money every day, more than $4 billion for armament and military expenditures, for the safeguard of the territories and the frontiers.
We have the possibility to do that, but we don't do it sufficiently. Technically, we can. Yeah. So I think what came out of the various discussions that we had about the building of the scientific mind, and you refer to that also in your chapter, we must transform, particularly also in the mind.
You had this idea for many years. Mm-hmm. Even before the possibility of expressing ourselves, you had already saying, we must know what happens, we must know reality, we must be a scientific mind, and we must have a consciousness that if we do not act immediately or urgently now, we can have problems that otherwise we cannot solve.
Exactly.
And what has happened with the Arctic? In the Arctic, 10 years ago, 10 years only, there were 1,200,000 square kilometers of ice. Now there is less than 10%. What are we doing? Mm-hmm. I mean, why we are following all this stupid governance, and instead of this, we should now very rapidly say, no, we want to have a multilateral democratic system, and we want that 196 countries are those that take the reins of their future in their hands. And this is finished. And we must not follow anymore all these people that consider that are these supremacists. America first. No, sir. America first. No. All the countries at the same time, all the human beings of all the countries have the same value and the same power. And we must be able to react.
Federico, you're one of those people that I find very interesting, and in the sense that you are a scientist, you're also a poet, you're a thinker, you're a dreamer, you're a humanist. Isn't that something that actually is the richness of the scientific mind? Because many people think of the scientific mind as the mind of the scientists. There are lots of scientists who are just bureaucrats. They know what they have to do. They do what they are being told to do. But we need a much broader kind of thinking and contemplation. So the arts and the sciences need to be kept together. And this is not a new message, of course, but it's embodied in a person like yourself. You write poetry, and there's one of the poems that you wrote is in the chapter.
But from the very beginning, what you have said concerning the educational process, that we must utilize in all its full extent the distinctive capacities of the human beings. Mm-hmm. And this for me, Jan, is so easy like this. Every human being able to create is our hope. Because all of us, we are able to create. And all of us, we are able to express our views and not ever more to act on the dictate of the others. This is terrible what is happening now with due respect as well. There are so many good persons, but they consider their religion, for example, as the possibility of only to thinking, if I do not do this, what you are going to do, what you are told to do, because you have some persons that finally put you in dogmas or in not acting in freedom. And freedom is a wonder. To be free. This is, I consider, the first thing that we must take into account in educational process. What says UNESCO again? And allow me to tell about UNESCO because, of course, you know what I have done. And this for this, that when I was in UNESCO, I was not following the normative. I did only what the UNESCO's constitution says. And I said, this is democracy. And I said, and I repeat now, this is education. What says about education the UNESCO's constitution? They said, one educated person is the person that is free and responsible. This is education. Education is not, now we are with all these PISA reports and all these things, we are considering education as, you must know more English. No. This is capacity. This is learning more. But to be educated, you must be free. You must be able to think on yourself, to express your reflections, to tell what do you think. You must listen. But afterwards, you must be you. Mm-hmm. And it is for this that I like very much that the commission that I created, that was chaired by Jacques Delors, said the first thing is learn to be. Mm-hmm. Learn to be. You must learn to be. This is the first. You are a human being, and therefore you are able to think. You are able to anticipate. You are able to imagine. You are able to innovate. You are able to create. Every human being is a creator. And this is our hope, because we can create a future that is not necessarily the result of the present situation. You follow me?
Yeah, sure.
because I repeat, I like very much what you have done, because from the very beginning you have said that we must know reality, that we must have a scientific thinking, that we, in our learning process, we must be conscious of what is the situation of the world as a whole. And then we must say, no. Now I realize that all the people, we must be united at this moment in order to say the global threats need to have a global reaction, because there are not threats of United States or threats of Brazil or threats of, no. The threats at this moment at the global level, and we must have a global reaction. Knowledge-based reaction. This is what I like to underline talking with you, because this is what you have done. Knowledge-based. And knowledge-based also economy. because now we have an economy based on speculation, based on the production decentralization. We must go to produce in countries where the conditions. What is this? I mean, we must be scientific, knowledge-based in our decisions.
And we must know what we do not know.
Exactly. And we do not know many things still.
Exactly. You wrote a poem.
It's for this that I am very worried. I am very worried when they talk about artificial intelligence. The word intelligence must be always reserved for the human being.
It is very artificial. In the chapter, you wrote a poem that starts actually with the words, "I know nothing."
Yes.
Would you mind reading it? I have it here.
I must put my glasses. I know nothing other than that I am. That I am here, astonished. Other than that I see, think and tremble. I am nothing other than that I know. Perplexed and confused, that when man was born, conscious of the earth and the sea and the wind and the clouds, the universe become the dwelling place of light, of creators. And I know that I can rebel, and that I can do this or that I can be a source of light or darkness, that I can rise or fall. Yes.
Beautiful.
This was written.
You wrote this in
Teotihuacan.
Yes. I think in the Aztec culture, this was considered the birthplace of the gods, right?
Yes, but we do not know. I think that the first man was already the original.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Well, we have come very far, actually, since that prehistoric time that you're referring to, and actually beyond the notion that we know nothing. There are things that we know, but particularly important is that we know how to create knowledge and how to handle it. So the scientific mind is a very complex kind of animal. Over the more than 10 years they've been working on the issue, we identified all kinds of dimensions, and I think there are many that you refer to in your chapter also. So it's
the title of this contribution to your book is "Invent the Future."
Yeah.
And I think that this is now our responsibility, free and responsible.
Absolutely.
Then we must be free, completely free to say what we really think and not what we are told to do. For example, what happens with the media? The media then is a scandal.
Yeah.
Today, 80% of the media, they are their master voice. I remember when I was younger, that were
the dog and
yes, saying his master voice, master voice. Well, today we must tell the truth. Most of the media, they say what they are told to say, and therefore they are misleading the people.
Yes.
At least for this, there must be a reaction and say no. Now every single human being is a person that is able to create. And today we are already women and men, and we are without any distinction by sexual sensibilities, nothing. All human beings are equal in dignity.
There's a problem with the broadcast media that you're referring to. They are the voice of their masters. There's also a problem with the social media in the sense that we haven't yet figured out how to really make those work in a way that they incentivize the creativity of the users. Yeah. When I read what people write on their Facebook pages,
Yeah.
it's not extremely inspiring, generally speaking.
No, but it's for this. But why there are many persons that only take in consideration what they say? For me, this is one part of the things that I.
It is, yeah.
But I know that are other sources that are more more wise and that reflect the truth of the things. For me as a scientist, this what you have said now is very important, because if we do not know reality in depth, we cannot change in depth. If we only know something about, with many, then we can change only this in a very epidermic way, in a very superficial way. Mm-hmm. But to make really in-depth transformations as today we must do, we must know in depth the reality. And for this, we cannot only take as the source of our information the social networks. And it's for this that, for me, when the people say, oh yes, okay, but we must try, and in your process of education, in this scientific thinking, it is very clear that we must also know what they say, but not only to have this as the only source. We must, I repeat, we must take many sources of information. We must learn to listen the others, and then we must express our views. And we can be, of course, we can be wrong, but we must be ourselves. First of all, learn to be. Second, learn to know. And do not, this is, I think this is very important, we must not take information as knowledge. This is a real problem.
Yeah.
Knowledge.
There's one thing that you mentioned in your chapter, and I've heard it from you before. A quote from Hans Krebs.
Yes.
With whom you worked in Oxford,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Can you repeat that?
No, one day precisely, I was telling him, Professor, he was a fantastic person. I was telling him, I am here because in Granada, in the University of Granada, I have not this apparatus, I have not these instruments, and therefore I am taking, and he told me, from now on, you only, again, not only Saturday and Sunday, the days to think, but also Friday. Because he told me, research is to see what others can see as well, and to think what nobody has thought.
Exactly. Yeah.
To think what nobody has thought. This is research. This is the progress, because you are thinking in a different way what the others have also seen, but they have not thought. And I fully agree that this is also a part of this scientific thinking that you promote.
Yeah, exactly.
And that we must know that information is not knowledge. Information, we must verify if this information is true. And what is also, when we, instead of information, we have news. In general, one news is, for this that is a new, is something that does not happen normally. And we take this today, you see the television, only there are news. Very terrible things, catastrophes, things that happen. But then you must see, what kind of real impact has this at the social level, as the economical level, as the ethical level? What are the impacts? Because otherwise, if you only take the information, the news today, the knowledge that you receive is that all is terrible. There are only people killing the others. Therefore we must also have a reference of the good things that humanity is doing at this moment. We only normally receive the darkest aspects of the human life on the earth.
I very much agree, Federico. So I thank you very much for having had the opportunity to talk to you.
I am delighted.
And
I wish you, I wish to you and your initiatives and this book a very big success. Why? Because I repeat, we must realize that every human being must have his or her destiny in his or her hands. We cannot accept anymore that there is always a male absolute power living. No, no. Every human being must be able to decide on his future.
Thank you very much, Federico.
Thank you. Thank you.